Welcome to the Being Known podcast with my friend, Dr. Curt Thompson.
And my friend, Pepper Sweeney.
We are here to discover and explore what it means to be truly known. Hey, Curt.
Hey, Pep. Hey, just to get started. Dude, man, I'm digging that shirt of yours. I love that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I am digging. What am I digging? The deepest place. For those of you who are not watching on YouTube, I just held up the book, and I knew I was allowed to do it because you put it on social media this week, and I saw it. I was so fired up.
Yeah.
I got an advanced copy, and it is awesome. The Deepest Place, Suffering and the Formation of Hope by my friend, Dr. Curt Thompson, MD, author of The Soul of Shame. When's it come out officially?
I think August 27th, I think, but it's in the last week of August. It's coming.
But can people pre-order now?
People can pre-order now, and that would be a lovely thing to do. And that means you'll be getting your copy as soon as it's possibly available.
And does that also mean they will get a bonus recording of you and I and Amy talking about a chapter in the book in advance?
Right, chapter book. Because if you go to my website, I think you can download a free copy of the first chapter, but then you can get a second chapter, chapter 4 on glory, if you pre-order the book.
That's
which
awesome.
Would be great. Yeah,
I should have told you I was going to bring that up. Give you a little.
Oh, it's okay. No, that's a great surprise.
You would be prepared.
It's like,
no, it's
like wait, what do you have? That's my book.
It is your book. And by the way, we were at your house last October.
Yeah.
And we were looking at different possibilities for the book cover.
For the book cover, right?
Yeah,
right.
And
yeah.
I'm so glad that you picked the one that I like so much.
Well, I'm a good soldier. I listen to wise people around me.
I don't know because
I listen to people of wisdom, and then I do what they suggest I do.
Yeah. Listen, we got a lot to cover today. We got to jump in. We are in the midst of season 7 here, and we are talking about confessional communities because so many of you have asked us to talk about this, and you want more information on it and to know the ins and outs and to know the reason for it all. And today we are going to be talking about learning to love doing the work, because it is work, and we want to just say that up front.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, that really is true. People often ask me the question, when they think about doing psychotherapy in general, or especially with these confessional communities, the first question is like, how long do I have to do this? Right. It's like we're already looking for a way out.
Yeah.
And I think this is part of the beauty of the gospel. Jesus is unflinching and unapologetic about the reality of the world in which we live, and that to follow him means we're going to pick up our cross. To follow him means that the gate and the path are narrow. And to follow him, it is there that we find life like we cannot even begin to imagine. And so, it is work. But it is work that people will say, the very same people who are asking, how long do I have to do this, are, months later saying, why can't church be like this? Saying, I can't imagine not being in this group. Mm-hmm. And so it is because it's not because it's just only a joyride. It is hard work that continues, but there is joy to be cultivated and curated, and beauty and goodness to be experienced. And so what we want to talk about today is what does it mean for us to work in these groups over the course of the time that we have it? And the first thing that we want to say, we talk about the phases that confessional communities kind of evolve through. And the first phase, we enter into it. Often, if I agree to do this, I'm thinking most people will think, oh, this is a place that I can go where I can find solutions to the problems in my real life, quote unquote real life, that's outside the group, my marriage, my family, my work, my this, my that, my depression, my anxiety. At some point in the not very far into the future, once people are engaged in this, we learn that, the second phase, I entered the second phase, that it's not just me, it's all of us are doing this work, but we're doing this work together to solve the problems of our lives in the life that is the real life that we have that's outside this community. And after enough time together in which we are vulnerable enough, telling our stories enough, we discovered that we let down our guard, and now we don't always put our best foot forward, and we will start to discover that, oh, John across the room is pissing me off. Or like, I just like Sarah, like why can't she just get over the fact that her parents are not going to love her? Like, quit complaining about it. Like, these are the things, like, I start to feel impatient. And so, oh, but I would never say that to Sarah. Until we discover that, oh, actually, that is the very thing that we need to begin to say. Like, Sarah, when you say, like, okay, this is what's happening with me. It's the work is what's happening in the room. That this is our real life. And that what we're doing in our real life in this space is then transferable into the rest of my real life. And so these phases, some people enter into these phases pretty quickly over the period of, like, some people are jumping into the second and third phase, like within the very first meeting. And for some people, it takes weeks and months to do this. Sure. But this is not unlike life in the church. We do the same thing in church. We do the same thing in other institutions.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not unlike life. It's not like life
right,
anywhere.
Which is like why it's real. And so we discover that this work that we do then is like, it's like artwork, and that our life and the life of the community itself is that art, that beauty that is being revealed. I discover that my depression, my anxiety, my challenging marriage, my drug addicted son, daughter, all these things are not problems primarily, but they are the glory of God waiting to be revealed, as John talks about the blind man as Jesus talks about the blind man in John chapter 9. And so one of the first things that we say that we're doing when we are beginning to do this, one of the first skill sets that we develop is that we practice becoming aware of the power of presence. That most people don't believe that their presence matters. And if I'm going to matter, I got to have an answer to your question. I got to solve your problem. I got to come up. I got to be able to prove my worth. And we don't have much opportunity or experience, knowing that, like, oh no, actually, you're just your attuned presence, and your empathy, and your validation, and your vulnerability brings healing into the room. And what you're doing is you are bearing and restoring the image of God, as we read about in the second sentence of the Bible, that the Spirit of God hovered and then brought order and purpose. We name things to tame things. I name things internally that are coming up within me in order to tame them, my anxiety, my fear, my grief, my rage, all these things. But I also name things externally. Pepper, when you said that, gosh, it just brought back this image of me sitting in my kitchen with my dad yelling at my mom, and me just feeling like I got to crawl under the table in order to keep myself protected, or, all these things that we talk about. So it's internal and external things that we're naming, but we want to do so with curiosity and not with condemnation. And because if we are practicing being curious, we discover that opens the door to being creative, bringing beauty out of things that feel really challenging about our own story. And we discover then, and all these things, we're kind of flying through all this stuff here today in this episode. All these things take time, practice. And one of the things that takes time and practice is learning that I want to tell my story. I want to name the things within me that I'm experiencing, whether it's about an event that's happened to me, or if it's about the experience that I'm having right now in the room between me and other people in the room. But I want to be asking questions about other people's stories. I'm so often, I want to tell you your story. I want to tell you.
Right.
I'm going to tell you what I think about your story. I'm even sometimes going to ask questions that are really not questions. When I say, like, don't you think that, shouldn't you want to, like how many times do we hear that in our kitchen? I mean, we're telling our teenage children these things, like, don't you really want to?
Right.
Or, like when I was a kid, right? I remember I told this story in another episode, probably, like when I was about 10 years old playing football. And she says, where do you think Jesus wants you to be tonight? Like going to prayer meeting. I'm like, oh, yeah. So we're telling our story, asking others about theirs. And then we discover these revelations that come from both within me and from without of me. So if I'm going to be like, revelation is something that I encounter when I have first prepared for it. And so when people come, every time we come to the confessional community, every week that we come, oftentimes people they just kind of come, they just show up. Without recognizing that, like, oh no, I have to come ready to do the work. Like, I don't think Tom Brady he just came to practice and just like, oh, that's when he begins to think about it.
It makes me think of the guy that shows up at the first day of rehearsal and hasn't memorized his lines, hasn't looked at the script, hasn't done the work, that he needed to walk in the room.
Right. Yeah. Hasn't imagined being in the grocery store, filling the bag.
Right. None of that stuff.
Right. We have to come prepared to do the work. And what are some things that we can then prepare to do? I can name, what does it mean to continue to talk about the last episode we talked about the storytelling liturgy where we start the process, but now when we come back, we can talk about events that I've experienced in the last week or that I experienced when I was 17. We can talk about our relational encounters, what it's like. Well, what is my relationship like with my parents, with my wife, with my kids, with my friends? I want to talk about my experience. We talk about this acronym that's a short, it's kind of like a Cliff Notes version of my sense, image, feel, think, and behave. That SIFT-B acronym. And I want to keep in mind the arc of my life. How is what is happening right now, even in the room, connected to what's happened in the first 2 decades of my life? My entire life is always going to be in the room. Some parts of that part of my life, some parts I'm going to be more aware of than in others at any given time, but I want to be curious about that and curious about other people's stories as well.
My entire life is always going to be in the room. Drop the mic.
Yeah.
I mean,
dude.
Yeah.
It's true. It's true. Right. We think, oh, that happened when I was 10. That happened when I was, that happened last week or whatever. And I think like, yeah, that history is in the past. Like, no, like it's in your head, which means if you're in the room, it's in the room.
Yeah.
This is where we've said in other episodes, like, as far as the brain is concerned, there's no such thing as the past or the future. It's all right here, right now. It's simply a matter of what am I actually going to turn my attention to?
Right. Wow.
Yeah. And so asking questions is an important part of this. We talk about, there are 5 interrogatories in the human language that are helpful for the most part. Who, what, where, when, and how. The question why, it's not a bad word, right? It's not like a 3-letter, 4-letter word. But it often is not really so much a question. Why did my son not come home from Iraq? That's not really a question as much as it's an expression of anguish. Mm-hmm. And so we want to ask those first 5 questions: who, what, where, when, and how. We want to pay attention to what we are feeling, an emphasis on my emotion. I'm not feeling that. We say to folks, anytime somebody says, I feel, and after feel, it follows with the word that. I feel that, we're no longer talking about a feeling. It's not an emotion. We're talking about a thought, an assessment, an analysis of things. We want to pay attention to emotion. We want to pay attention to where and how we sense it in our bodies. We ask the question a lot, what do you want? This is a question, what do I want? I want to be asking the question of my friends in the room, what do you want? Not only that, what do you want from a particular person? Like, dude, we are so nervous. Like we're sitting in a room with 6 or 7 other people.
Right.
And I say like, well, I'm worried to say this because I'm worried that people will be upset with me. People, like, I'm worried that people, like, what people? Like, you've got 7 people to pick from. Name them. Well, I can't like Remember, we're moving from the imagination to the incarnation. We want to be because the more able we are to be in the room fully. I'm worried that Pepper is going to think I'm stupid because, look, the guy's an actor. The guy has all this creative energy, and I've got this idea that I want to think, and I'm afraid to tell it because for Pepper, I'm afraid you're going to think that this is silly. It's not like I think people will think it's silly because I'm looking over there at Jan and she's not, she's not somebody that I feel, there are particular people with whom I'm going to have particular interactions. And the sooner I practice naming that, the sooner I reduce my anxiety and the sooner we can actually get after the real work of discovering that, when I say this and Pepper says no, tell me. And then we have the interaction and I discover, that's not what he's saying. That's a story I'm making up in my head. And if Pepper's just as committed, if you're just as committed to this process, you might have feelings and so forth, but we discover that I can actually tolerate myself. I can actually bear, naming what I want in the room and to discover that people don't need to I don't have to be worried about that. So we're moving from imagination to incarnation, not just what I'm paying attention to what's happening in the room between me and others, but also between each of us around the room as a whole. I mean, I know that we got to be careful about our time here, but dude, I got to tell you something.
Yeah.
I got to tell you something. This happened this week. We're in a room and one person was talking about their story that was, just fraught with a lot of anguish and people were feeling very, very protective of this other person. And they were anxious because they want this person to take steps to kind of set some boundaries and so forth. But this person, their situation is humans, man. We just do the worst things to each other and to our children that are adults. So we're having this conversation and you could feel the tension in the room. The person who's talking, they're not the only one who's upset about these things. Other people, they're you're feeling it. And it's people are having a hard time. And then one other person says, I just have to say, and then turns and then speaks to the first person who's talking. I have to just say, I'm just being overcome with this felt sense of darkness. I'm just really heavy. I'm just really feeling. She names this. And dude, and that person themselves, there are elements of their story that really resonate with the elements of this other person's story, the first person who's talking. And dude, I will tell you, it's the first time that I came close to feeling like I'm watching a mini exorcism take place. The story. I mean, this is overdoing it, but the story when Jesus heals the demoniac in the Gadarenes and he sends the spirit into the pigs go over the so forth and so on. And I turned to the person who said, I'm just feeling this sense of darkness. And I start to name things with them about their story and about where this is resonating with person number one's story. And they said, yes, absolutely. This is what it's like. We're naming the spirit that's in the room. And the strange thing is, everybody in the room, my colleague says, I'm looking around the room and I'm noticing that in the last 60 seconds, the room has become strangely at peace. And everybody goes around the room, yeah, I'm not anxious at all. The person who was first speaking, he says yeah, I feel like I feel so much more confident about being able to do what I need to do.
That's amazing.
And dude, I'm this is the Spirit of God at work because people are telling their stories more truly. In person number two, we named this, they calm down. It's I don't have words.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is what we are doing in this space.
It is amazing to hear what real examples of what's going on in the room like that. And the temperature, everything changing the way you talk about it. And it's just, it's just really amazing. And I love this episode so much, and I'm concerned that we're not going to have enough time or it's going to be a 2-hour episode. So I think what we're going to do is I think we wrap this episode and right here, and
right on.
and then we'll continue with part 2 next week. And so we won't have an artistic what do we call them? The artistic
offering.
We won't have an artistic offering or an application this week, but we will have it for part 2 for next week.
Yeah, we will.
Kurt, and we're not going to have Amy come in either for the post show. That will all be that'll all be next week. Oh man, we should do this more often. Amy, we could. We could.
Yeah,
hey,
most of the time.
Kurt, thank you so much for today,
dude. Right on. Yep.
Love you. Love this work.
Yep.
All right.
Right on. Yep.
Till next time.
Till next time.
This podcast is produced by Kurt Thompson, Pepper Sweeney, and myself, Amy Chella. Audio production and editing is by Keaton Simons. Video production and editing is done by Mark Gould. If you'd like to connect with us, you can find us on social media at BeingKnownPod. If you like this podcast, tell a friend. If you love this podcast, tell everyone you know. And please like, rate, and review wherever you listen. Be well, be now.